During the reign of Queen Victoria, the British Empire reached its maximum. Queen Victoria was made Empress of India because British people were very proud of their colonies all around the world, the Commonwealth. In 1851 in London, the Great Exhibition was held in the mythical Crystal Palace. It was an opportunity to show products which came from the colonies and all the scientific and technological developments. The English didn't know much about life in the colonies. They learned a lot by reading novels written at the end of the 19th century by Kipling, Conrad, and Forster. Two authors, neither of whom was British, described the European imperialism at the end of the 19th century, Rudyard Kipling and Joseph Conrad. Kipling was born in India, a British colony. He studied in England. He moved to the United States. He knew the British Empire and he wanted to describe life in colonies. He shared Benjamin Disraeli's idea that the East is a career. According to Kipling, the best English young men were sent to colonies because it was a huge professional experience. But it was certainly a great sacrifice for these young men, for their families, and for England. Kipling was enthusiastic of European and American imperialism because he truly believed that Western white men had superior culture and civilization, and that they had the mission of spreading them in the virgin and unknown lands of Africa, South America, and India. Kipling wrote some short stories such as The Jungle Book and Kim, and a famous poem, White Man's Burden. In this 7-stanza poem, Kipling makes an apology of European and American imperialism. White men had the mission to bring the Western civilization to native populations. In the poem, Kipling defined the natives as half devils and half children to indicate that they were as naive as children, but they might be as violent and cruel as devils. Joseph Conrad was born in the Polish Ukraine. He knew the Russian imperialism. He moved to France, where he learned French and became a sailor. Then he moved to England and became a British citizen. He had a dream. He wanted to make a voyage in the heart of Black Africa. So he embarked on a steamboat and reached Congo, that at that time was a personal possession of King Leopold of Belgium. The 1884 Berlin Conference marked the climax of the European competition for territory in Africa, a process which is commonly known as the Scramble of Africa. European nations such as Great Britain, France, and Germany began looking to Africa for natural resources for their growing industrial sectors, as well as a potential market for the goods these factories produced. Heart of Darkness is a semi-autobiographical novella in which Joseph Conrad makes observation about the evils of colonialism. Conrad, through Charlie Marlowe, the protagonist, begins his narrative by reminding the readers that the Romans were doing the very same thing nearly 20 centuries before. The physical horrors of colonialism are described. The incursion and exploitation by the white intruders upon the natives is a merry dance of death and trade. Colonialism is a consequence of man's voracious hunger for power, insatiable greed for possessions, land, people and goods, and endless capacity for evil. It is so now, and it has been so since early civilizations, those Romans he mentioned. Colonialism is just the product of what is worst in man. Ironically, Kurz is the character who seems to realize this truth. When he examines his own greedy, corrupted and exploiting soul, Kurz goes mad. His last words, the horror, are not describing colonialism, but the nature of man. Heart of Darkness. The protagonist of this short novel, Charlie Marlowe, has been hired by a Belgian company that trades in African ivory. His mission is to travel to a company outpost called the Inner Station in Congo to look for a man named Kurz, who has not been in touch with his home office in Belgium for some time. Kurz has been running the Inner Station with amazing efficiency, returning tons of ivory to his employers and earning a reputation elevating him to the status of legend. Kurz is an English agent of French and German origins who moved to Congo as a colonizer. He is the best ivory trader. He is described as a genius. He is a philosopher, a poet, and a painter. At the beginning, he tries to impose his Western culture to the natives. But he is seduced by the tribal rites and influenced by the native culture because he lives in the savage tribes. A painting of his represents a blind old woman who carries a lamp. On the floor, a naked man is sitting. This painting symbolizes Western colonizers who justify imperialism by saying that it is a mission and that they bring the Western civilization to primitives. But indeed, they are blind. They are made blind by their avidity and by their thirst for power. During his trip to the Inner Station, Marlowe collects information about Kurz. Everybody says that Kurz is a remarkable man. When Marlowe meets him, it is an epiphany for him, a revelation. Marlowe is actually looking for an identity, for a model to follow. His aunt had convinced him to move to Congo because that difficult mission would have made him a better man. Marlowe is fascinated by Kurz. Kurz is a wise man. He had learned from his experiences. Now he is an ill man. Marlowe has to bring him back to Europe, but Kurz died before the steamboat sails. Marlowe is in Kurz's cabin during his agony. His eyes are looking in the empty. He is looking back at all his life in a flashback. He exclaims, "The horror, the horror." We can interpret Kurz's last words in several ways. The horror could refer to imperialism itself, made of violence, oppression, injustice. The horror could refer to the human condition, to death, or to the violent, cruel inner drives of every man, which he learned to love while he lived with the natives.